Hey, Discern listeners, a lot of you have been asking me to comment on the Jonah Hill controversy, so I thought to give us an introduction, I would look at the Washington Post article here. Surfer Sarah Brady posted screenshots on her Instagram and accused her ex-partner, the actor Jonah Hill, of misogyny and emotional abuse. Okay. In the texts, Sarah Brady shared a person whose number she saved under the name Jonah. So the journalist is trying to be careful, like maybe this is Jonah Hill, maybe not, but it looks like it is, that this Jonah person asked her to take down social media posts, asked her to stop modeling, asked her to cut off friendships with some men, and also cut off friendships with women who are in unstable places. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at those exact texts in a second. Okay, it says here that Sarah Brady and Jonah Hill dated for roughly a year, breaking up in 2022. Says here that Sarah Brady is a California-based surfer who has advocated for environmental causes and is a law student, according to her Instagram. Okay, so I found a video that is on the YouTube channel called Viral Vision. It seems like it's a good summary. Let's watch.
Jonah Hill is getting canceled right now by his ex-girlfriend for allegedly being misogynistic and narcissistic. She took the following private...
Okay, so right away. Now, misogynistic, I've seen a little bit of the texts, and it seems like that might be an appropriate use of that term. But the term narcissistic, I'm going to have to see a lot more data to justify that allegation. When it comes to the word narcissistic, people on the internet and in our society are now basically, I think, using the term as a stand-in for abusive. I don't know why the word abusive became out of fashion and then narcissistic just replaced it. It's not the technical term in our field. Narcissism is a very complicated term, as I've talked about in all my deep dives, but I'm going to take a guess and say that Sarah Brady is accusing him of being misogynistic, sexist, and also abusive. That's just a guess.
For allegedly being misogynistic and narcissistic. She took the following private conversation via text messages to her Instagram story last night with Jonah Hill says, "Speaking out is so..."
Okay, so they broke up about a year ago, and then for some reason last week she posted some text exchanges allegedly between her and Jonah Hill. So I wonder what prompted that.
Sarah then posted the following story saying,
okay, so looks like these are the text exchanges. This is a warning to all girls. If your partner is talking to you like this, make an exit plan. Love y'all. Call me if you need an ear.
To all girls, if your partner is talking to you like this, make an exit plan. Love y'all, call me if you need an ear. The text messages shown say the following, all the posts removed from my page with a screen recording attached. Jonah Hill then replied, "Good start. You don't seem to get it, but it's not my place to teach you."
Okay, so little I do know, I believe the context of this is that Jonah Hill was asking her to take down pictures and videos of her in a bikini. So in the article it says she's a law student, but I thought she was also a professional surfer or a surf instructor or something. But regardless, let's just say that she's a recreational surfer and takes pictures of herself surfing. My understanding is that Jonah Hill was asking her to take down those pictures and other pictures that he thought were inappropriate or triggering to him or something. And the way it looked to me was that he was jealous. And jealousy is a feeling that all of us are prone to feel at times, depending. And it's what we do with the jealousy is the issue, not whether or not we feel it. People will often try to get rid of their jealous feelings, which often doesn't work. Jealousy, depending on what we're talking about, but in this situation, the trigger is for Jonah, I think, I can't tell, but I've treated a lot of clients. You see your partner doing something or some circumstances happening that triggers your worry that you're going to lose your partner. They are going to leave you or they'll find someone else better than you. That's usually the worry, right? Whether you can admit that to yourself or not. And that feeling is a good feeling. I have that with my wife. I don't want to lose her. I might occasionally be triggered along those lines. It's a normal feeling. It can even be a positive feeling, meaning that if there is distance between me and my wife, I feel that distance and I feel hurt or I feel worried that I'm going to lose her. So I want to be closer with her. And maybe it's a conversation that we have or putting more effort into the relationship. relationship or something. These are normal, good, attachment-oriented feelings and motivations. But what do we do with the jealous feelings? Do we control by telling someone they can't do certain things? Do we put them down? Do we abuse them? Do we hit them? So I'll just role play what I would say if I were in Jonah's shoes, or what I believe to be Jonah's shoes. For the record, I don't have this kind of jealousy. My wife is a professional model and has a lot of pictures out there that are, revealing, if you will, and it never triggered me. She models with other men where they are being romantic together. I feel very secure in my relationship with my wife, so that sort of thing just doesn't trigger me. I'm not saying I'm better than other people. I'm just saying that just isn't an issue for me in particular. But anyway, so if I were actually jealous in that way that I think Jonah was, I would try to say something like this. I would try to say something like, so, Sarah, when you post pictures like that, which is completely your right, and I don't want to control that, but when you post pictures like that, it kind of freaks me out. So I guess what I am now alerted to is that I'm not totally secure that you want to be with me. When you post pictures like that, in my head, I go to these really crazy places where I think that someone is going to be attracted to you and they're going to contact you, or I worry that you're going to meet another surfer and he'll be, more attractive than me, or you'll be attracted to him more than, and the two of you have that in common of surfing, and I'm just terrified that I'm going to lose you. I think that's what's happening for me. So I guess I'm just wondering how you feel about me. Do you ever have those impulses of wanting to be with other people? I don't know. Let's have a conversation about it. And if so, could you reassure me that you're not going to leave me? So you notice in the role play that I am role playing how to talk about the feelings and how to get your needs met, because that's all jealousy is telling us, is that a need isn't being met. Something is wrong. But what people typically will do is they will resort to a script that is given to them by sexism, by misogyny, by toxic masculinity that involves control, because that's what other people might say. That's what they might have seen other people do. Other people might advise them to do that. And there isn't a script that is provided in our culture regarding the role play that I did, where you actually get your needs met and communicate about things in a more effective way. So I think what we're looking at here is Jonah replying to Sarah saying, good start, regarding taking down those pictures from Instagram. You don't seem to get it, but it's not my place to teach you. You don't seem to get it, but it's not my place to teach you. That's pretty condescending. We don't know if this is accurate. Is it Jonah Hill? What's the context? It's hard to tell with text, but I don't know. There's a pretty clear communication there. You don't seem to get it, meaning that he thought that she was taking them down to please him because she believes him to be unreasonable. So she's just complying with him rather than understanding what he's trying to say. And then he's like, you don't seem to get it, but it's not my place to teach you. Again, it's hard to tell what that means, but that doesn't look good. I've made my boundaries clear. You refuse to let go of some of them, and you've made that clear. And I hope it makes you happy. I've made my boundaries clear. So I think there's a lot of talk about this word of boundaries. We know because Jonah Hill made that documentary called Stutz. I did a whole series of reaction videos to that. The long and short of it was that the form of therapy that this Dr. Stutz was using is not unique to Dr. Stutz. The documentary was, and I think the clinician was basically saying that he invented this kind of therapy. And I'm here to tell you that there was nothing about what he did, aside from some of the specifics in terms of his language, but the overarching style of therapy, as far as I can tell, has been around for decades. There are so many therapists that were like this therapist. And really, I was upset because if you watch the documentary, you might see this therapist and say, oh, he actually looks like the kind of therapist I would want to work with. But the premise of the documentary is that he's one of a kind and no one else is even close to being like him. And that might turn off people from going to therapy because they're like, well, I'm never going to be able to get in with that guy. And they don't know that there are plenty of therapists in their community who are actually very similar to him. Anyway, we know that Jonah Hill is in therapy and very much values it. And so it's possible that he's picked up on therapy speak regarding boundaries, and people will do this. And more and more lately, for example, misusing words like narcissist, that kind of thing. But I've known it for my entire career. I have a lot of friends who are therapists, and even 30 years ago, I remember some of my colleagues and friends would misuse our language and our concepts and our terms as a way of trying to justify their own issues, maybe toxic issues. I remember an instance like this in my early career where I had a friend of mine who was becoming over-involved with another friend's marriage. And I was advising my friend who is a therapist, and saying something like, it's fine that you want to help your friend and his marriage, but it's not really your place. You seem to be invading this marriage too much, in my estimation. And my friend said to me, justifying his actions, he says, well, they've triangulated me. And I won't go into the whole details on triangulation or listen to my deep dives on that, but he was basically saying that the couple, the married couple, had actually sucked him in and he didn't have any control over it, that kind of thing. And that wasn't the way it looked to me. It looked more like my friend was invading. Now, might there have been a little bit of triangulation, but it seemed much more initiated by him. So I remember noting that. I was like, oh, it's interesting that he is using our therapy speak, our concepts, and he's distorting them to justify his own actions, which all therapists will do. There's no, I do that too. When I'm upset and distorted and triggered, I'm going to see the world in my particular distorted, biased way, and I'm going to use the concepts that are available to me. Some people might think it's unethical or something to do that, but I can't help the way that I see the world, and I see the world through my therapist lens that I've had for 30 years. So it seems like possible that if I'm interpreting it right, that Jonah Hill is doing that as well, that he's triggered, he's terrified he's going to lose Sarah. It doesn't justify him being controlling in this way or misusing therapy terms, but it is a common thing for people to do, especially if Jonah Hill sees the world through this lens. It's also possible that Jonah Hill might have, this is all speculative, but I've seen this in the real world, right? Where people will go to therapy and they will give their very distorted bias story to their therapist, and their therapist will believe it and be convinced of it and not confront it at all, and will even recommend or entertain ideas of just like, maybe you should draw boundaries and say that she can't do that kind of thing. And so Jonah Hill might even literally be using phrases that the therapist even provided him regarding this specific situation. Of course, there's no data regarding that, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
I've made my boundaries clear. You refuse to let go of some of them, and you've made that clear, and I hope it makes you happy. Then proceeded to attach a screenshot of Sarah's most recent Instagram video. Jonah Hill proceeded to say, respect however you want to live your life. You only get one sort of done with explaining myself.
So, yeah, she is surfing. And she has some sort of swimwear on, because assume that's what you wear when you are surfing. And then he says, respect however you want to live your life, and you only get one sort of done with explaining myself. So it sounds like this is in the midst of a conflict that they were having, maybe in person. She says, 3 removed, meaning she took down 3 things. Not the video yet. It is my best surfing video. Would you feel better if the cover frame was different? Ew, this really is icky to look at, for someone to control someone like this, and for someone, Sarah, to make her feel like she's like, I'm sorry. To hear her being forced into a situation where she has to be like, would you feel better if the cover frame was different? Any more specific ones that bother you? To think that this would make her feel like she's a bad person or a slut, or it's upsetting.
Say, respect however you want to live your life. You only get one sort of done with explaining myself. Sarah responded with 3 removes, not the video. Yet it is my best surfing video. Would you feel better if the cover frame was different? Any more specific ones that bother you? Jonah Hill replied with, yes, one that isn't of your thong. Sarah replied, not a thong, but K.
Okay. So he's still upset. She, according, in terms of the tone of the texts, is being extremely accommodating and nice to him, even though I don't think he deserves it necessarily, given what I think the context is. And she's like, would it be okay if I did this and anything more specific? And he's like, yes, just interpreting that tone, but one that isn't of your ass in a thong. And she's like, it's not a thong, but okay. And as far as other pictures, you in a bathing suit surfing or not? Is he saying any pictures of her in a bathing suit of surfing? So I don't know.
Jonah Hill responds, and as far as other pictures, you are in a bathing suit, surfing or not, I'm done. There's tons I'm going back to the past month. You want to argue, and I don't.
All right. He says, I'm done. There's tons. I'm just going back the past month. You want to argue, and I don't. She says, you're done. What does that mean? Yeah. Okay. We don't know the situation. When I evaluate couples or individuals regarding domestic violence, intimate partner violence perpetration, it takes a long time. There are measures we use, instruments that we use, assessments that we use. Also, you have to interview quite a bit. And it can be hard to tell, even when everyone's being honest, when you have police reports, this kind of thing. But the process, it is lengthy, it is in person, there's multiple vectors of data that you are gathering. And as a clinician, I don't make a public statement. I make recommendations of treatment, or sometimes there's recommendations to the court, that kind of thing. So it's impossible for me to be able to gauge what's really going on based on this limited information. However, there are some things that I can comment on. I can use it as a jumping off point. And I can tell you that I've treated a lot of people a lot of perpetrators of intimate partner violence who will do this sort of thing. If you watch my videos or listen to my podcast, you know that my perspective is that abusive people, perpetrators, typically are reacting due to attachment worries. They are worried they're going to lose their attachments, and they have a very dysfunctional, possibly criminal way of trying to solve that problem. They are worried they're going to lose their partner, and so they will gaslight and keep them away from other people. They will put them down, because if the victim feels bad about themselves, they won't assert themselves. They won't try to have power in the relationship or power in the world. And it's all generated from the perpetrator's terror of losing attachments. It doesn't make it okay. There are abusive people who are psychopathic and or sadistic and don't necessarily have those kinds of wounds, but those are rare perpetrators. I treated perpetrators who were court mandated into the group that I was a clinician in, and we would treat them over a year in group therapy to de-brainwash them, because they often had these very misogynistic and entitled notions about what it is to be a man, because the group that I'm referring to in my mind right now was for male perpetrators. It was a very involved process, a lot of emotional regulation, a lot of trauma recovery, a lot of psychological issues. It's very involved. And so I learned that abusive people typically have a very particular mindset that informs what they do. It feels right to them. It feels okay. Some of the language in this text is indicative of that, where they will feel very righteous, they'll feel very entitled. There will be this very certain way of talking. Abusive people of a particular profile will be very certain as they talk to the victim. They'll just be like, you're wrong, there's something wrong with you. And they might even threaten to break up at times, of just like, look, if you're not going to give in on this, then I'm done. I break up. I don't know if that's what we're seeing, but I just thought I'd use it as a jumping off point. My whole point in making these kinds of videos is so that I can raise awareness for intimate partner violence in general, relationship dynamics in general, victimization in general, not only for victims to get the help that they need, because sometimes when you hear people on the internet talking about these sorts of things, you're like, oh, maybe that's me. But also, if you've been through it in the past, you deserve to seek help with a therapist that understands you so you can recover, because there can be ongoing effects from it. But also for perpetrators, I will get emails and comments below from perpetrators that will tell me that because of the way I talk about perpetrators, I don't let them off the hook, but I will have some compassion for perpetrators because I treat perpetrators. And one of the key factors in my model of helping perpetrators is that I have compassion, that I try to have care for them. And that is the inroad to actually helping them to, at the very least, believe me when I'm telling them that there's another way to get their needs met, and the way that they're doing it is not only criminal and wrong, but it's not ultimately going to get them what they want. And so compassion and care and really accurately seeing these individuals, I think, is the key to treatment. So when I propose that vibe, that perspective, perpetrators listening will email me and say, for the very first time, I feel like I'm able to admit that I'm a perpetrator of abuse. And if there are other clinicians like you out there, which there's thousands of clinicians like me, unlike Stutz, I'm not going to claim that I'm one of a kind, because I am not one of a kind. I am part of a very large field. I stand on the shoulders of giants. Everything that I know came from people before me. So, I'm just one of many. That's why I'm doing all this stuff. I'm not doing it necessarily to say anything specific about Jonah Hill and Sarah Brady, because that would be diagnosing from afar, and I don't have enough information. And if I did, I wouldn't publish it on the internet because of confidentiality. But let's watch more.
Sarah responds with, "You're done? What does that mean?" Jonah Hill then says, "I'm just over-explaining myself." Sarah then posts a cropped picture saying, "I too struggle with mental health, but I do not use it to control people like he did to me. It's been a year of healing and growth with the help of loved ones and doctors to get back to living my life without guilt, shame, and self-judgment for things as small as surfing in a swimsuit rather than a more conservative wetsuit. And I'm sure there's still more healing from this pain ahead of me."
Yeah, so if it was ongoing and the text exchange is indicative of what was ongoing, then yeah, it's hard to feel the emotional pressure from the texts, but I've seen it enough to know that it's unlikely that there wasn't emotional pressure, and it's also unlikely that that emotional pressure was only present for short periods of time over text. It was probably 99% of the time it was in person that Jonah Hill was putting this emotional pressure, seemingly. So then yeah, that can take a toll on you. Absolutely. It can break you down. It can make you feel like you're worthless or disgusting or wrong or not a good partner or a slut. Even for me, I've been through an abusive relationship, and as a clinician, I've treated perpetrators and victims, and so I see the signs, and I know the mindset of victims and the pitfalls that a victim will fall into, because they'll end up believing what is being told to them, and yet I still couldn't protect myself from those effects. I have everything available to me. I have support. I have a lot of privilege in life. And even though I had all that expertise, I couldn't protect myself from the negative effects of the abuse. So it'll get under your skin eventually, is my point, is that even in the beginning, if you're just like, I don't know about that, but it's just unrelenting. And there's these Ys in the road that you will make psychologically where you're forced to choose between two things. You can choose to continue to stand up for yourself and even believe that the other person is wrong, but what that results in is a lot more conflict, a lot more strife, and attachment loss for yourself. That's one thing that people don't emphasize enough, is that for victims, they often are really desperate for the attachment. There's a lot of good things to the relationship, right? And especially if you come from your own attachment trauma, then there might be some complications there, right? So you have to choose between staying within reality and valuing yourself and asserting yourself, but causing a lot of problems and risking losing your partner, which most people don't want to do, even if the partner is abusive. Or you can take this other road where you just give in, and you might even gaslight yourself, or you might even just convince yourself that, yeah, maybe I am wrong, maybe I am a slut, maybe I am a gross, disgusting person, or my body is a thing that needs to be covered. So often, with enough time, it's so much easier just to take that route. And then once you're out of the relationship, it takes a lot of time to come out of that mindset, because you've done it to yourself. The voices have gotten inside your head, and now you're abusing yourself, and it takes a lot of therapy and healing to get rid of those voices. Okay, so this is taking longer than I thought. So let's adjourn there, part 1. Tune in next time when I continue talking about this in part 2. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.